Okay, so here we are with Minion CheckDB. Man, it's been a long time.
Woo!
I'm here with Jen. She's over there on the other side. She's going to be moderating this. So when you guys have questions, and we're so incredibly happy to answer questions as best we can, go ahead and type them in the window. She's going to be monitoring that, and we're going to have a couple down times when we're waiting for a CheckDB to finish, where we'll be able to take questions. We've got this scheduled for an hour and a half. I don't think we're going to go for an hour and a half, but we are willing to sit here and answer questions and show you stuff as long as you want. We're just going to make the official thing an hour, I think, as close to an hour as we can, right?
Yeah.
So she's going to be keeping track of that for me. So, all right, so CheckDB. We've been writing this product for a very long time, and one of the reasons why it took so long is because we needed to rewrite some things. Not only do we have to write the product itself, but we also needed help from Minion Backup, and we needed to rewrite the installer. Now, I've got lots of videos on CheckDB already, and I'm going to be putting out lots more videos. The installer is going to have its own video, but pretty much the entire installer has been moved to PowerShell, and that gives us some really cool things that we can do. And you're going to see a little bit of it here when I do the install, because we're going to start CheckDB from ground zero. We're going to run through the install and then start doing the demo. But first, I wanted to talk about some of talk about the reasons why we wrote this to begin with. There are so many shops with large numbers of servers and large numbers of databases and very, very big databases that are having so much trouble doing CheckDB because they run out of snapshot space, or they don't have time to get through their 3,000 databases, or they have to build these processes to do them remotely, and all of that, and it's just, it's not a good situation when CheckDB is so incredibly neglected. So we've wrote what we hope, can we call it a maintenance ballet?
A maintenance ballet?
A maintenance ballet.
Sure.
That's what I'm going to stick with. So,
I approve.
but we've written something that we hope you guys really like. We're very proud of some of the features in here. But let's go ahead and get started with the install. So I think I need to get on the right one. So let's go ahead and go on Management Studio. And then, yeah, I need to create my database. Yep, so I'm going to create it in the CheckDB test database. So we're just going to jump right in here. There we go. Got a brand new database.
Make sure you use it.
Yes, 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 I will. So there it is right there, CheckDB. It's empty because you just saw me create it. Now let's go ahead and run the install. I'm not going to tell you about everything the installer has to offer right now, but basically here's how it works. You call Minion Setup Master. You pass it the server that you want to install it on, the name of the database you want to install it in, and the name of the product. And that's one of the, there are two really big things that we got here. Number one, we can install all of the products at once. And yes, reindex will be added to this just as soon as humanly possible. And two, you can install it on multiple servers just as easily as you can install it on one server. So I passed in localhost here, but if I were to put this in quotes and then separate server names with a pipe, then I can install it on a list of servers. As well, if I have a list of servers coming in from, say, a text file or a database or wherever you happen to keep it, the install document actually tells you how to do that, but it's really easy to install this across hundreds of servers.
Sure.
Oh, you came over here. It looked like you had something to say.
No, not at all. I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit go.
I love the eyes.
We've got our eyes. We're watching you.
It scared the crap out of me the first time I ran it.
Okay, and we're just going to roll through the objects. Takes the data a couple seconds. And there we go. We have just installed CheckDB and Backup in our new database. There's also a brand new install log, and all the documentation has been unified, all of this stuff. It's really nifty. So if I refresh this database, so we got a whole host of tables for CheckDB and Backup. Now we've got a lot more tables and a lot more objects than we did for any of the other products. but don't let that scare you. You've got a single entry point into this product. Most of this stuff, and there are only a small number of settings tables. So most of those tables are going to be internal behind the scenes stuff or different logs that you'll use for one thing or another. Okay, we were going to start out with showing you how to do the ordering and all of that. But you know what? A lot of you guys are familiar with our other products, and the ordering and the exclusion, all that stuff works the same way that it does in CheckDB and Backup. So instead, let's just do a quick table overview. This is the main settings table, right? Settings DB. So you've got two types of operations in here that come by default. You got CheckDB and CheckTable. Minion default for database name, of course, like it does in all our products, means all of the databases. And then you can set up database specific rows in here later on to override. So, of course, we've got our exclude, our grouping options, and then we've got our CheckDB options as well. If I can get this thing to scroll. There we go. The repair options aren't being used right now, but we do plan on using that. But all error messages, extended logical checks, no information is tab lock, integrity check level, which is going to be like physical only and whatnot, right? Disable DOP, which is going to be turning on 2523, I think is the trace flag.
I can never keep track.
Yeah, I can't either. I think it's 2523, but Kendra's here. I'm sure she'll let me know if it's wrong. Whether or not it's a remote, what the preferred server is. So these are all your remote settings right here. We're definitely going to get into those in a few minutes. If I can get this thing to go. There we go. The result mode is either going to be full or summary. So do you want to store all of the result rows that come in, or just the summary rows? How long you want to keep the history? Whether or not you want to push it to the Minion Enterprise product. The auto repair stuff isn't being used yet. Default schema, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get into today or not.
But it's in the documentation.
But it is, yes. And it's also in the videos. So we've got DB precode and postcode, and table precode and postcode, and then prefix and suffix. Now, prefix and suffix are different from table precode and postcode in that a prefix and a suffix is run in the same
Batch.
in the same batch,
Yeah.
right? So a table precode is meant to help set up the environment for a specific table, but a suffix is meant to run in the same batch or in the same transaction, so that, let's say that you want to turn on a trace flag, a specialized trace flag for one of the tables or one of the databases or something, right? That's where that would come in. The DB internal thresholds we're definitely going to get into, because that one's really nifty. Default time estimate, I don't know if we're going to get into that one yet or not, but it has to do with the time, with the time rotation. Log skips has to do with the time rotation as well. And of course, every one of these settings can be either for, you know, daily or weekdays or weekend or a specific day, something like that, right? And then begin and end time. So I'll show you, I hope I will be able to show you some stuff with that as well. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. The settings table is a lot the same, so there's no really point in going into that, because it's the same thing, just for table level overrides instead. So now let's see, where do we want to get into? You know, we talked about, Jen, we talked about not doing these first few demos because we got so much other cooler stuff to show them.
Yeah.
But we never talked about where we were going to start.
Let's skip the exclude and jump right into the table ordering and get into, what's the next thing?
Table exclusions is after that. Let's talk about table limiting.
Yes, there we go.
Okay, so we're going to get into table limiting instead. So one of the nifty things that you can do here is you can easily decide which tables are going to be run. And so because I'm running it with statement only, this is the only time, and you would have seen this by now, by the way, if we'd have run through the other demos, one of the other times that we're not going to call CheckDB master. So if you were to call these to run with statement only equals 0, then you would pass these two parameters into CheckDB master. But since it's statement only, then right this second we have to call CheckTable. So what I'm saying here is I want to do all the tables in the collector schema. So when I run this, I'm getting all the tables in the collector schema. And since it's statement only, there are all of my CheckTable statements. Now as well, I can combine them. So I can get collector and alert. So I can get multiple schemas there. And it's going to be in no particular order right now. I can do wildcard schemas. There you go. So I'm getting collector and clone in there. And I can combine. I can combine C percent with alert. So I get all of the C's and the alert schema specifically. So there's alert, there's collector, and then clone should be in there somewhere, and then there's clone as well. So I'm getting all three of those schemas. Now I can also do specific tables. So I can say I want alert.backupDefer, I want archive.config, and I want clone.logins to push. There we go. I've got just those three. And of course here are my statements that I'm pushing as well. And again, if you have any questions, Jen's going to collect those, and she'll give me when we get a little bit later on. Unless it's really important right now, you're welcome to interrupt me. But we can also get wildcard tables. So I can get all of the alert.index percent tables and all of the collector.avail percent tables. So there we go. I've got all of those. Now, the default schema issue, you know what, let's go ahead and run that because we missed those other ones. So let's say that I want to get all of the backup percent tables. Here's what that looks like. Now, what I'm trying to get is I'm trying to get all of the alert.backup percent tables. But you notice I'm not specifying the schema in here. So what I end up with is all of the DBO.backup tables, right? That's not what I wanted. Remember, I wanted the alert instead. So let me go ahead and do this. There we go. So instead, what I can do, if I can find it, there we go, is this default schema in here is set for DBO by default, but I just set it to alert. So what that means is if I don't have a schema on my table name in the tables parameter, it's going to use this default schema instead. So now when I run that exact same thing again, now I get my alert.backupDefer table. It turns out there's only one because now it's going to use that schema that I specified as the default schema. Beautiful. All right. Wow, we're already at snapshots. I am really zooming through this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so snapshots. This is a beautiful feature. SQL, of course, lets you take CheckDBs on custom snapshots, but only on certain editions and versions of SQL. So below SQL 2016 SP1, you can only do it on Enterprise, but SP1 and above, you can do it on Standard as well. So if you are on a version that lets you do custom snapshots, it's extremely easy to take snapshots. You need to do two things. First, you need to tell it that you want to take the snapshot, the custom snapshot to begin with. That's done in the settings snapshot table right here. Now, this is one of those tables that I consider to be what I'm calling extension tables, right? It's an extension of the settings DB table. We could have taken all of these rows and all of these columns and just tacked them onto the end of that table, but then we'd have a table with 275 columns in it, right? So we decided to specialize a little bit. So the settings snapshot table, of course, you've got one for CheckTable and CheckDB, and the Minion default, again, means all the databases, but you see here we also have a database override row. Now, you'll see in a little bit when we get to the auto section that it's a really good idea that if you have if you have an override in any of the tables that you do one for CheckTable and CheckDB. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes because we're going to get there pretty soon. Now, the only thing you have to do to set custom snapshot on is to say custom snapshot equals 1. That's all you need to do. We've also got retention in minutes, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And we've got delete final snapshot. And that column has got a very interesting name. Delete final snapshot. Yes, when we get to the dynamic section, you're going to see what we mean. And we've got snapshot fail actions. Basically what that is if the snapshot fails for whatever reason, you can define how it moves forward. Does it fail? Does it skip? Does it run with an internal snapshot? Does it run with an internal snapshot with tab lock, right? So you get to choose how it performs, or what happens if the snapshot itself fails. And null just means fail, right? Null and fail are the same thing, but you may want to put fail in there just to really emphasize to yourself what's going to happen if that snapshot fails to create. So that's number 1. I have turned on custom snapshot. Number 2, I need to tell it where I want the snapshot files to go. And that's going to be in the snapshot path table. Here we go. So I've got Minion default here, so I want every database that does a custom snapshot on this box, I want them to go to C Snapshot CheckDB. And this process will create the folder for you, right? So no problems there. The file name being Minion default, that means all of the files. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's go ahead and run this. Now, if you'll remember, actually you don't have to remember, I'll show you if I can find it. There we are. In the snapshot table, we have told it not to delete the snapshot. There we are. This isn't a big database, so it'll happen really fast. So when you take a snapshot like this, when you've got a process that takes snapshots like this and does something against them, you shouldn't have to manage those, because you're going to wake up in 3 months and you're going to have hundreds or thousands of snapshots on your box, right? So you shouldn't have to manage those. That's why we manage that for you. Now, come here to snapshots, and you can see I've got a demo snapshot right there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that demo snapshot, and I'm going to set delete final snapshot equal to 1. And now that just turned that guy on right there. And so now when I run this exact same thing again, let's see if I still have my snapshot on there. Nope. So this is done, and the snapshot isn't there anymore, right? There's no snapshot there. But how can we be positive that it actually used the snapshot, right? Well, let's go to the log details table, and I'm only going to choose a handful of rows that we're interested in, like 4 or 5 rows that we're interested in. So here's what we've got the last 2 runs that we've done, and you can see that the database name that I was running CheckDB against was the demo database, and that's in the database name. But the CheckDB name, the database that the CheckDB was run against, was demo 1945-917, and then there's the 217 right there. So you can see we actually did run it against the snapshot databases. Now, let's talk about using multiple files. Here's where I want to set my data here. There we go. And I want to be in snapshot path for this. Now I have set custom snapshot for the snapshot. I have turned delete final snapshot back off so that we can look at the snapshot again, right? And in the path, what I've defined here, I've got a database level override. The database name is snapshot test multi-files, and it's got 4 files in it. That's these last rows right here. So Minion default is any file that doesn't have a database, that doesn't have an override, right? So I want this file name, this is the logical file name. I want files to go to C snapshot test multi-files. I want files 2 to go to the files 2 folder, files 3 to go to the files 3 folder. Now, of course, you'd probably be putting these on separate drives, right? And anything that's not covered by any of these 3 overrides, I want to go into this folder. And it just so happens that there is a snapshot multi-test files 4, right? So let's go ahead and take this and execute. There we go. And we should see our snapshot show up here any second. There's our snapshot. Perfect. Now if I go look at log details again, here is the database. Here is the database it was run against, and you notice that that matches the snapshot name, right? 9560, 9560. Oops, there we go. Now let's go look at the snapshot log table. Snapshot log table gives us some really interesting info, and it's got one for every database file. So I'm going to highlight all of these guys right here, and you can see the names. I've got 4, 3, 2, log, and 0, right? And the physical names of these guys, or let's just take a look at the path, right? Remember, number 4, which is this guy right here, number 4 is going to go here, and all the other ones are going to their respective folders, right? So here's the folder, and we also give you the command that was run to create the snapshot, and then the max size for each individual file. As well, we can inspect through sysmaster files. We can see where all the files landed ultimately. So here is 2 going to folder 2, here is 3 going to folder 3, and here is 4 going to that initial My Snapshot CheckDB, right? Because it was a catch-all for the ones that we didn't have. So a lot of power in placing your files as well. Same thing, you can do snapshots for check tables as well. So let's see, I'm going to add a row to the path. So here I've got snapshot multi-test files, or snapshot test multi-files for CheckTable, and I want all of the CheckTable snapshot files, because they're Minion default, right? I want all of them to go to My Snapshot CheckTable instead. And if I come here to the settings snapshot table, I don't have a specific row for that database, so it's going to take it from the Minion default row. So I am going to take a custom snapshot. I am not going to delete the custom snapshot, as it turns out, and I don't have a retention minute set, unless I'm doing this for demo. No, I'm doing it for demo. So for demo, I do have a retention set, but since this only has like 4 or 5 tables in it, it's only going to run. It's going to run really fast, and I'm still not deleting the final snapshot. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. It'll only take a few seconds. There we go. And if I come over here and look at my snapshot, there's the one I just did, 0367. I'm going to start deleting some of these. Well, I shouldn't have deleted that one because I was going to look at master files, but but let's take a look at this. You can see that all of my tables, here's my table names, went to these guys. Okay, and I can see my snapshot log right there for the check table. And I kind of blew this demo by deleting my my snapshot right away. Okay, now I'm going to kill my snapshots, and that is the end of basic snapshots. Do we have any questions yet?
We do have a couple of questions. Jason asks, will the install be used for updates to the product too?
The installer, yes, it will be the exact same installer for updates, because it's built into the scripts to either install or update to new versions of it. So yes, it will.
And Kendra asks, can you do file groups specifically at this point? Just asking as it's the only way to check a chunk of a partitions table.
No, we don't do file groups right this second, as in if you're asking for DBCC check file group, We don't do that right this second, but I do hope to bring that in very quickly.
And that's it.
And that's it. Okay, cool.
File group?
Huh. I wonder if we have somebody unmuted because I just heard.
Yeah.
And that's very distracting. Hold on, guys. Let me see if I can kill anybody. Yep.
Don't murder people.
Okay, I almost muted us.
That would have been quite silly.
Okay, let's get into some dynamic settings.
Yes.
No, auto thresholds is where this happens, and it's very easy. What this allows us to do is if you've got a database that just is that is getting too big or could get too big to run a full CheckDB on, right? Because it's just so busy and you don't have the disk space for the snapshot or whatever, right? And you don't have any extra disks to take an external snapshot with, right? So what this allows you to do is it allows you to set up so that if the database gets past a certain size, you will automatically switch from CheckDB to CheckTable. So right now we've got it set at 100 gigs. So if the database crosses 100 gigs, then it will then it'll automatically switch to CheckTables. So let me go ahead and switch this to 5 gigs instead, right here. There we go. And I'm going to use this auto setting. So it only happens when you use the auto setting. And I'm going to use this against the Minion database, and this is the exact same thing that the routine calls. I'm just going to call it manually. And so it shows here that Minion is 17.5 gigs, so it's going to run a check table because I passed it in the auto setting, right? And of course, because I told it to run a check table after it hits 5 gigs. So when I run this with auto, and it only happens if you run it with auto, you'll see that we've got check tables running. There we go. And we're going to wait for a couple minutes for that to finish. Is there anything else come in real quick before while we wait? Okay, I think that's going to take it a couple minutes. Let me think. I had something else. You can check all with the pre-code. You can check individual file groups at a per table level, but you just have to check which tables are in that file group and then exclude the rest of them, right? So there is a way to do that with CheckTable, but we're not specifically running check file group right now. I really wanted to do that, but oh my God, we were already at like, what, a year and a half for this?
It was a long time. We do have a question.
Okay, go for it.
With CheckTable, does it also run checkalloc and all that biz?
It can run checkalloc as well, yes.
Do we have a feature setting for that somewhere?
Yeah, it's just the op name and the settings DB where you put in CheckTable or CheckDB, you just put in checkalloc.
Let me make sure that I've got that documented correctly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's see how we're running here. How many of these do we have? Oh, we're running through these quite a way. There we go. And you see, this is only a small fraction of the log table. We're going to hopefully get into some of the log table here. How long does it take? It takes about 2 minutes, I think, 2.5 minutes maybe. So we've got a few more seconds. Now, let's see. What was I going to say? You know, again, talking about this this auto parameter, I think by default in the schedule table we have the auto parameter turned on because, and we've got it set at 100 gigs because we wanted you to be able to do this very easily. So I think we wanted to be able to have this kind of growth really easily with by default, right? We wanted you to be able to have some tuning settings by default. And all of these things work really well with the CheckDB and the CheckTable stuff. So here we go. That is finished. And we've got all 151 tables And it looks like, yeah, it's almost finished. I thought it was finished. Nope, it's almost finished. It's got some house cleaning to do. There we go. It's done now. Okay. Now, if I run this, I'm going to set this threshold up to 20 gigs. And then if I run this guy right here, you see now it's going to run a CheckDB because now it's under the threshold. So now I'm going to run this again with a CheckDB. There we go. And you see we've also got this lovely live insight right here that tells you the percent complete as it's running. So it's 15% now, 16%, 24%, and so on. It'll run a lot faster than a check table process will, right? So let's see, what's next? Okay, so next we're going to talk about maximizing your window. I'm going to talk while I let that finish, right? So some of the things that, some of the problems that people have is maximizing their window and getting things done in a good time. And so we've put a lot of work into letting you keep your maintenance window, right? And so this first thing that I want to show you is to lessen the checks during the week. And what that means is we're going to allow you to set up different days to do different types of operations or run this operation with different things. So let me set my data here. I'm still running, so I can't really set my data just yet. What's up?
Oh, I was just looking at seeing what you were doing.
Oh, okay. So while
this is where you're setting up physical.
Yeah, so while that's running,
yeah.
One of the things that we've seen that shops like to do a lot, especially when they got a really busy server with really big databases, is every single day they'll run a CheckDB with physical only. So that they're only checking the physical structures themselves, right? Not doing a deep, exhaustive CheckDB. And then on the weekends, when they've got more time, then they do the full-blown CheckDBs, right? So we've coded that in for you to be a really easy way to do that. Here, let's see how much longer this is going to be. It's at 96%, so we're almost done here. At 100, there we go, just finished. Perfect. All right, so that took about 2 minutes. So now let me run this right here. So here's what we've got. We've got Minion default rows, and I've got 2 Minion default rows for CheckDB. I've got line 1 and line 3. And the only difference between these two guys is that line 1 has physical only set, and it is set to run on weekdays, and this one without it is set to run on weekends, right? So so you can see that you can very easily run this with one setting than the other setting. Now, let me show you how we do. This is the SP that we use to make that determination. So I've set this for 2/1, which is today. Today's a weekday, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's Wednesday.
And the 4th is going to be Saturday.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, you're right.
Yes. So if I call this is going to return the ID of the settings row that's going to be used for the run. Okay? So if I call this with today's date, and a lot of the stuff we have these days have test date times so you can test your settings.
Sure.
Right? So if I run this like that, I get settings ID 1, so I'm going to run it with physical only because that's the weekday setting.
Right.
If I call this with the 4th, I'm going to get setting ID 4, which is the weekend setting, so it's not going to run with physical only. So instead of having to manage 2 different jobs for that, I've just got a setting now that I don't even have to toggle. It automatically toggles it for me based off of the day.
We're big fans of not having multiple jobs for things. I mean, you can totally skip by all the scheduled table-based scheduling if you really want to. I've got a section in the documentation on that. But we're kind of in love with the table-based scheduling. So you got options.
Right. Now this, I think, this is one of the things that really brings us into the running for your favorite tool of all time, right?
This one's really good.
We love the rest of this. The rest of this entire demo is just, right? So again, we're still under the heading of maximizing your window.
Right.
So we allow you to multi-thread CheckDBs. And so what that means is you can, and not the way that CheckDB multi-threads, right? Because if you're on enterprise, CheckDB will automatically multi-thread internally, right? What we're talking about is we allow you to run CheckDB on multiple databases at a time. Let me go ahead and collapse this guy right here. There we go. So that's very easy. You run the CheckDB master and you pass in num of concurrent processes equals 3 or 10 or 5 or 20, right? Now, let me caution you. You have to have the server resources for this. We don't limit you in any way. We're not going to try to be smarter than you, right? But if you've got the resources, if you've got a server with lots of databases, and you've got a lot of server resources, as in you've got a maintenance window and the box is yours, right? And you've only got 2 hours to get through it all, max this puppy out, man.
Blow it out of the water.
Right? If you've got the disk to handle it, you've got the CPU and the memory to handle it, go for it.
But he's right. This is really easy to overdo. So.
Right? Now, forgive me, I am on a laptop, right? So I'm only going to do 3 threads, but I wanted to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to run CheckDB with 3 threads. And then when I come over here to the window, it takes a minute for them to spin up, but you can see I've got 3 running. And it's just going to churn through these guys, and I can even see the percentages as they go. Now, one thing I want you to notice, that Minion takes a while, but it still churns through those other databases while Minion is going. So Minion's at 30%, and it's still doing these other guys. So you don't have to wait for Minion to finish for it to cycle through all the other databases. You can take this long database and do it throughout and still churn through your other databases, and you don't have to set up any extra jobs for that. There we go. I'm still just watching. Look at that. Minion's at 54. Minion's still at 54. Minion's at 70. And here's what that looks like. Here's how we do that. If I can get this to expand. We spawn off separate jobs. There we go. So we've got these worker thread jobs that do that for you. And it looks like we're just about to finish up. Yep, the job just finished up. Now look, when I refresh this, we clean up after ourselves. All those worker thread jobs are gone, right? So they're temporary jobs that we create to run these threads, and then we clean up after ourselves, which is something that I wish I could say for our kids or whatnot, right? Okay. You can also do the same thing with CheckTable. And this is also, again, where we really shine, right? Especially if you've got your database nice and spread out, right? You've got lots of tables on different file groups on different disks, and maybe even you've got snapshots on different disks and all this stuff, right? I mean, you could spread this stuff out really nicely, right? So DB internal threads equals 3. The DB internal threads means when you do a check table, how many check tables are you going to run in that database at the same time? Again, I'm only going to do 3 because I'm on a laptop. But you also get this exact same thing with CheckTable. And if you've got the resources, there's no reason why you can't do it, right? So I'm going to kick that guy off, and you're going to see these guys spin up. And it takes a few seconds to spin them up, but there we go. We've got these going. And if I come over here to jobs, now I've got the CheckTable database thread runner 1, 2, and 3 working. And these guys will always be able to do their thing. There we are, and we are just churning through them and churning through them and churning through them. You don't mind if I stop this? You guys don't have to watch all of these tables go, right? Right? You don't have to watch all of these, especially since we're down to the big tables now. So I'm going to stop this, and hopefully I won't roll. Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't roll back too long. Okay. So there's that. And by the way, there's no reason why we can't combine these 2 methods. So let me set a little bit of data here. I'm not entirely sure what I just set, but hopefully I'll be able to find it. There we go. And I think I may be resource lagging now because I stopped that. So here's what I've got. Inside I've got oh, that's what I did. So I've got a check table override row from Minion, right? And all the way over here, I've got DB internal threads set to 2. So I want to run 2 threads for my check table, right? So I'm going to run auto, and I've set my auto settings back to 5. So Minion is going to do a check table.
For anything over 5 gig.
Yes, for anything over 5 gigs.
Got it.
So Minion, since it's over 5 gigs, it's 17 gigs, it's going to run a check table. But a lot of these databases are going to run CheckDBs, right? Because I'm running auto. It's going to run CheckDB or CheckTable, whatever you've told it to do based off of the size, right? So number of concurrent processes equals 3. So you notice that I don't have to specify the DB internal threads. Since I'm not specifying the DB internal threads, it's going to use the table setting. If I use the DB internal threads, that parameter would be an override to the table setting. But since I'm not, we're just going to use the table setting, right? Now, well, let me get this going and then we'll talk.
Well, get that going and then you take a drink and I want to say something. Okay, so that's running right now? I don't think you clicked execute on it.
Yeah, it's going.
Oh, so it is. Well, then I'm a crazy person. I was just going to say, okay, so
there we go. Just took a minute to fire up.
Yeah, sure. So this is the auto thing. So we've got up to 3 databases running at the same time. And then for any database that has internal threads, which would be Minion, it's running CheckTable. So it's running 2. Did I get that right? That it's running,
yeah, it's running 2
tables at a time? Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that one too. I haven't seen a full demo of this yet.
Right. So here we go. Here's what our thread here's what our threads look like. We've got 3 Minion table threads and 3 worker threads. One of these worker threads has spawned these threads. Now, it looks like I did something wrong because I do have 3 worker threads for Minion, and I'm not doing through something. You know what? I bet you anything that since I killed that last job, something is still doing weird. Because I ran through this 5 minutes before the thing and it worked just fine. Hold on one sec, guys. Oh, now, and it could also just be my box. Remember, I'm low on resources right now. So with all of this, so I am on a laptop, so the threads may be having trouble spinning up. And this is kind of at the heart of what I'm talking about here. Yeah, see, something is blocked. That's the problem. Because it's got to be, because these guys aren't moving at all. So I'll straighten that out in a minute. So here's the problem that you can run into. If you're running 3 threads right here, or if you're running 5 threads, and you've got check tables set up for 3 of them, and those check tables are set to run 5 at a time, you can easily see now how you could be spawning off 15 or 30 jobs that are going to be fairly resource intensive really fast, right? So this is going to fan out very quickly into a resource hog. So you really kind of need to be careful about how many of these things that you do at once, right? I don't want to tell you what to do, right? I don't want to be, I'm not your mother, so I'm going to let you eat up every single resource on the box and kill your users if you want to. But that's between you and your users. I'm going to give you the tool to do whatever you need to do, right? So I'm going to stop this because I've got something blocked up here, and I know for a fact it's because I stopped that job and it didn't kill right. You shouldn't stop stuff like this, right? Oh. And I'm just going to restart SQL real quick because I just want to start from fresh, right?
Yeah, and I've got one of those with great power comes great responsibility sort of things.
Exactly.
Yeah. This reminds me extensively of the that PowerShell command where you can kill a single. When you're teaching PowerShell, you say, "Look, you can kill a service. Look, you can loop through and kill every single service on your box."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See, I've got some pretty decent performance stuff here. Now I'm going to go ahead and restart my my agent. I don't know why it didn't restart.
You're going to use this to make a case for getting a much more powerful laptop to do all your demos on, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there's that. We've got about 15 minutes. I really need to move on. So moving on to very large databases, this is something that's really nifty, right? What are we doing exactly here? Oh, dynamic snapshots. So now we're coming into the realm of dynamic snapshots where now I've got the snapshot retention minutes. Do not set your snapshot retention minutes for 1 minute. That's not what this is about. You're going to set it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 60 minutes, something like that. But the whole point is that if your database is so big that you can't run a CheckDB in any reasonable time, and you can't run check tables even against a snapshot in any reasonable time because it keeps filling up the snapshot and dying, right? What we do is we allow you to at given points, right, like in this case after every minute, right here, sorry, it doesn't count for CheckDB, but after every minute it will stop, drop the snapshot, recreate it, and move on. And then here we've got it set to delete the final snapshot. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and see. Now, this dynamic snapshot specifically that we're talking about has to have DB threads, DB internal threads equals 1. You have to serialize your check tables for this right now. We're trying to get it moved into the multi-threading model, but we're having trouble with it. So right now we're going to release it with the single-threaded model, but it's still pretty good, right? So as I do this, now I'm going to run that. Hopefully it'll cooperate more. And we are going to let this one run to finish because I do want to show you how the snapshots rotated, right? I don't want to do that. I want to do that. There we go. Okay, is there anything anybody needs to talk about while we're waiting for this?
No, but we've got a couple of really positive responses. We've got from Andrea Squee for weekday and weekend settings, and I did clarify that we've got, it's not just weekday, weekend, but we can also name specific days, and I'd have to look and see.
I don't think you can do the end of year and first of year stuff.
No, but you can do daily as well.
Yeah, you can do daily.
You've got those different categories you can do.
Yeah.
I've been so excited for this, and so far it isn't disappointing. And then in regard to, what was it? On the multi-threading check tables, we got that's pretty awesome.
Oh, cool. Excellent. That's one of my favorites too.
I know, right?
And as soon as we finish this, we're going to get into the remote restore stuff, and I think you're really going to like that.
Really, really going to like that.
Really, really going to like it. Let's see how we are, how we're progressing. Yep, we're chugging right along. And if we look here, you can see we've got a snapshot going. Yep, we've got a snapshot going. But look, hold on, give me a sec. Where am I? I'm in a minute 23. Okay, good.
You said this one takes about, what, 2 minutes?
I don't know. We'll see. But
I still love that, the live insight. I love being able to just sit there and go refresh.
Right. But look, you can see that we've already gone through a couple snapshots, right? So we are rotating the snapshots. So yeah, I don't know how long it'll take. 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, something like that. We're almost there, I'm sure. 116. Some of these guys will move really fast.
This is the exciting part of the job, is watching a script finish.
Right, and here we've still got our live insight right there. Lovely. One of my faves. Maybe zeroing in on it here. Some of these tables have practically nothing in them, and they'll move through really fast. There we are. It finished. Okay, so now that that has finished, you can see the distribution from across the snapshots. With a simple group by, we can see how many tables were handled in each snapshot. So I've got 9 tables were handled in one snapshot, 107, and then 35. So the snapshots are definitely being created, and you can see that that last snapshot was definitely deleted even. So there you go. You've got rotating snapshots, and it rotated probably roughly every minute. Things that can throw that off, right, are you get a really big table, something like that, right? Okay. Now, moving into scenario 2, now we're getting into the remote settings. let me set up this data, and then I'll show you what it takes to set up a remote job. Now, we've got the demo database here. It's really easy. You have to set it up is remote equals 1. You have to tell it the server that you want to run it on. You have to give it the name of the database, and there's a lot of nuance in here, right, that I don't have time to go into right now. Right now we're going to run connected mode, and we are not going to restore the database because right now we're going under the...
Right, there's a scenario where there's a third-party solution that's already restoring the database to QA or whatever, and we're saying, oh, okay, well, it already exists, so we'll just point our CheckDB at that and leave it alone, because that's a viable scenario.
And of course here, since we're doing this against the demo database, you see the preferred DB name is mal.mr issues. We're not making any assumptions about the database name at all, right? We'll let you run it against any database and say this is valid, right? But the thing to keep in mind, here, let me kick this off.
Yeah.
Because this is just gold. I think you guys are really going to like this. So the thing to keep in mind here when I run this and then come over here is that we are running CheckDB on Minion DevCon in connected mode. So we actually give you the name of the server in the log while we're doing it, so you can see which one it's running on, right? And the thing that's really important, really important,
super important,
is the fact that we give you all of the data back here.
Right. So you run a remote restore, it sends everything back, so you've got the information locally.
Right. So if you've got a large shop with a lot of DBAs and whatnot, right, you don't have to remember to go around to all the different servers and whatnot, right?
Absolutely. I said remote restore, I meant remote CheckDB.
Yeah, it's okay. So you don't have to remember, oh, this one is over here, I've got to go over there, and somebody comes in and says, hey, this CheckDB, this database has never been CheckDB before. Oh, well, we're doing it over here on this server, and you got to go over here. And then he goes over there, and there's nothing there. And this other DBA says, oh, well, that one was getting too maxed out. We're doing it over here on this server now instead. Oh, good God, will you people make up your minds, right?
You need all the records in one place.
Yeah,
if it lives here, the records need to be here.
Yeah, it is. The truth of the matter is that this is a CheckDB of this database, regardless of where it was done, so it needs to be reported on this server.
That's right.
That's the end of the discussion.
Okay, now we're your mother.
Yeah, now we're your mother, right? Okay, so there's that. Now, the second scenario here is we are going to be able to use the last Minion backup that you took. So last night's backup, we'll restore it to that other server and then run a CheckDB on it. And the cool thing about this is that the monitor, the status monitor, is smart enough to not only give you the status from the remote box, but it also tells you, it gives you the status of it restoring as well.
That's cool.
Right? So let's go ahead and check that out too.
Get that running, and then I got a thing to say.
I'm going to take a backup. Let's get the thing going first, right?
Now, normally this would be your normal backup operations, not you manually taking a backup before you're checking.
Exactly. I'm just making sure I have, but this is going to represent last night's backup, right? Or the last full backup we have.
Sure.
Now I'm just going to set the restore mode to equal last Minion backup.
Good
and the preferred DB name is restore CheckDB, restore database name from server name. And you notice we've got these tokens in here, right? These parameters. We're going to talk about that at the end, I hope.
Sure.
And I'm going to do that from there. So I'm going to set the data in here. And now I'm going to run my remote CheckDB that's going to start with the restore. I'm restoring it on Minion DevCon. And this is really fast, so it's not going to... Fatal error, and I remember why. The reason why it's giving me a fatal error is because I never cleaned up the database from last time because I didn't have it set to drop the database after the...
Right, because that was a demo. You have the option of keeping or dropping the database, which I think you actually look at in a sec.
Right.
And we didn't do it last time, so that's on us.
Right. So, and it takes forever to expand the databases on this thing. So here we are. So there it is from last time. I am going to kill that database, and I'm going to run this again. There we go. Now you see I'm restoring the database. I'm restoring it at 27%. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Restoring it at 100%. Now, if it stays at restoring at 100% for a while, That's recovery. There we go. And now it's complete because it runs the CheckDB
Yeah, that
like
was really
that, right?
fast.
Now, the cool thing about this is I've got the remote CheckDB name as well, right? So really, really useful stuff here. Now, rotation. Guys, we got 4 minutes. Do y'all want to see the rotation or do y'all want to see the inline stuff?
By the way, I want to...
Or do y'all want to go for an hour and a half? I'm good.
Yeah, right. I want to interject here that we just did last Minion backup. You can also set it to new Minion backup, which causes Minion backup, of course, to take a new backup and restore that. And you should also be aware that this feature requires Minion Backup 1.3, which is the version just now released. So
Right.
they go hand in hand for a reason.
Right. So Tom says he wants to go for 90 minutes.
Sure, we're all
Sure,
over
I'll
it.
make it 90 minutes, whatever. I'll just run through the demos then. How's that?
Everybody says
And
yes.
you guys can fall off if you need to.
But you're going to miss the drawing if you do.
Yeah, but you're going to miss the drawing if you do. Okay, so let me start by, oh, and there's also a disconnected mode as well, right, that I don't even have come close to having time to do. Okay, so let's look at the rotations. So again, along the lines of having a lot of databases on there, right? Oops, I meant to do that. One of the things that we decided to do was give you automatic rotations. And what that means is if you've got, say, 3,000 databases on a server, you can set it up to, you know what, do 10 a night or do 10 at a time, right? It doesn't have to be a night, whenever your schedule is, right? But do 10 a day until they're all done and then start over, right? So by here, you just, and all of these rows already come, all you got to do is turn it on and set your value. So right now I want to limit it by DB count, and I want to do 10 of the databases on this server. And that's all there is to it. You just come in here and turn this on and set your number and you're done. It'll automatically do it. And it only works if include equals null, because you can't rotate through all the databases if you're only doing a certain number of databases, right? You either want to do a list of databases or you want to rotate through all of them, right? So when I do this, I get that fatal error on this one. Why? Because I set it to not delete the database last time, and it can't restore the database this time, right? That's why it's failing. So when I do that, I'm doing 6. But you notice how this is the money shot, right? I have a combination of local and remote CheckDBs running at the same time. I think that's pretty damn nifty. And some of these could even be check tables. So I did 10 of them. The thing has stopped, and I did 10, right? Let's run it one more time to show you that this time I'll get a different 10, with the exception of the one that failed. It's going to keep trying the demo database until it's able to do it. So here we are again with a different set of 10. And it's going to be doing Minion for a while, but you get the idea, right? It's going to be running those until they're done. If I go over here and fix this one and delete this database, it would pick up demo next time and pass, and then it would be able to move on, right? But it's going to keep trying that one that didn't get to finish again and again and again. Now, let me see where Minion is. Minion's at 33%. I just want to drop this one. I'm not gonna run this a third time. There we go. Okay. And where are we? Minion's still at 33. Come on, man. Do it. It'll make a jump up to like 50 or something here in a second.
Maybe 2 seconds.
Maybe 2 seconds.
4 seconds. I'm just going to keep saying numbers.
While we're doing this, let's go ahead. Let's continue talking about the remote functionality, right? Because there is so much here. In fact, we'll talk about the remote stuff. So, you know, the restore modes, you got the connected and the disconnected, and the way the disconnected works, and this is really just sitting there. The way the disconnected works is it creates all of the jobs on the other side.
Right.
Right, and it runs those jobs and then pushes it via PowerShell back to the main box. So even when you do it in disconnected mode. So the thing is with disconnected mode, the routine will run in a loop, right? So it goes in a waiter loop. So if it takes 2 days for it to finish a remote CheckDB, this job on your prod box will run for 2 days, but it'll just be sitting there in a waiter loop waiting for the results to be shipped back. And once it gets the results shipped back, then it goes ahead and finishes and does all its calculations and finishes up real quick, right?
Right.
So it's pretty nifty. You could be running all of your remote, all of your DBs remote, and there we go. Finally, it just had a jump right there, and it did all 10 databases. But you notice this is a different set of 10 than it did last time, right? Okay, so that is based off of count, right? Doing CheckDB based off of count. And you can also do that for check tables as well. You can do it for CheckDBs, but you can also do it for CheckTable as well. I can say if I've got a lot of tables, I can say run through 1,000 tables a night, 5,000 tables a night, whatever it takes, right? Or even better yet, and we love this, I can run the job for an hour a night until all of the databases are done, and then it'll rotate through them all, right? So I can do it based off of time as well, and that's what we're going to do right now. So let me go ahead and just kill all of this stuff. There we go. So what I've turned on here is I've turned on minutes. This is the one that's active right now, and I'm only going to run it for 1 minute. You are not going to run yours for 1 minute.
Don't do that.
Don't do that, right? Run it for 30 minutes or 60 minutes or something, right? But this would allow you to even run through check tables all day long. You could run for 20 minutes at a time every hour, right? And just sit there and just constantly be running through check tables if you wanted to, right? Now, for purposes that don't really need to be explained right now, I'm going to seed the log with data. That's not necessary, but I don't have time to explain the difference between all of this. And so now I'm going to run a CheckDB that will be based off of real metrics, and it's only going to run for about a minute. Oh, and look at this. Since I deleted that, we've got our remote restore back. So it's restoring up to 38%. Restoring complete. Everything's complete. We should kick off another one. There we go. Now we're moving to the next one. Now we're moving to the next one. And by the way, this is what errors look like. So we complete with 20 CheckDB errors found, and you would also see 20 CheckTable errors found or something like that, right? Go ahead and tell me if there are any questions.
Does Minion CheckDB need to be installed on each server or just the server hosting the database?
Right, for the remote.
I believe that's what Scott's referring to.
Okay, so the answer is yes and no. For the disconnected mode, yes, it needs to be restored on the remote database, on the remote server, absolutely. For connected mode, oddly enough, it needs one table, which means you might as well restore it on the other side, right? But yes, it needs at least one table, and it has to have the same, and that one table has to be in the same management database as well.
Does any collect these errors and send out alerts?
We do not send out alerts right now, but we give you everything you need to easily write your own alerts.
And as people write scripts, we'll add them to the community zone. There'll be templates available to start.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I highly suspect we've got a couple power users who are going to be writing alerts for this stuff right away. Like I said, there are a lot of features in here that we're not even able to touch today, right? There's a lot of nuance in some of this stuff. Now, let's see how long this ran. This ran for 1 minute and 4 seconds. And the status is complete on some of these, and on some of these they were skipped for time constraint violations. So you can see that it definitely didn't process some of these because they were going to take too long, right? So we definitely got our time constraint in there. Now, this last thing that we want to talk about is some of the new stuff in Minion Backup, and the main reason we're going to talk about it is because it not only is it really cool, but it directly relates to CheckDB as well, because the remote CheckDB stuff it relies on this new restore functionality and this new and the new inline tokens in backup, right? So it's really in your best interest to know how this stuff works. So the new restore database, or the new restore DB SP, what we wanted to tackle with this was we wanted to tackle those recurring restores that you have, right? Not losing an entire server. That's really fairly easy, and we've been able to do that since backup 1.0, right? But what we wanted to cover was every night I have to restore to my dev box, and every weekend I have to restore to my dev and my QA box, or something like that, right? I have to restore to different boxes on a regular basis. And so we were seeing a lot of people not being, having to write their own processes, and they've got different processes on different servers, and everything doesn't work the same. So we're trying to find a way to give you something really solid that you could do, right? And right now we only produce the statement, but I'm going to talk about what that means here in a minute and how this is really going to make things easier. So let me start by calling the restore settings path table. So restore settings path, again, Minion default means everybody, and this is where you're going to restore the files to. Now this is where we've set up these like server profiles. So as a matter of fact, let me do this. Let me enter in this data first. Sorry, let me grab this whole thing right here and do that. So we've got the server profile thing here, right? So let's look at the demo database because it's got overrides. If I'm going to write a restore statement for the local host, then I'm going to use these settings. But if I'm going to send it to Minion DevCon, which is where I usually send it, then I want to use these settings. And you notice how these inline tokens, so I want the path to be DBs, followed by the server name, followed by the instance, and I want the file name to be database name from, and then server, right? I want it to really stand out as where this database came from. But if I'm going to restore it to a quality server, then I want the MDFs to go to D, and then I want the LDFs to go to L under these respective paths, right? So you can see that for the different servers that you need to restore to on a regular basis, you can set up different paths. You can set up different profiles for these guys, right? So if I generate this guy right here, there we go, I get back a restore statement. Let me just give myself a little room here. There we go. And you can see that I'm doing the move, and I've named my database right here, because right here I wanted the restore database name to be database name _ date. And that's what I got. And here I wanted it to be DBs, Bindicon, and so on, and I wanted to move these files to this location. So I am gonna restore it to the place I told it to. Now, if I wanted to restore this to a different box, let's go ahead and just, yep. Okay, so let's look at thresholds real quick. We'll look at the different box in a second. So same thing with thresholds. For you guys that are already familiar with Minion Backup, we have dynamic thresholds. And now we have restore tuning thresholds as well. So on any individual server that you want to restore to, you can have different tuning thresholds as well as your databases grow and shrink. So you don't have to say this database is 200 gigs and have it be the same default untuned restore that you have everywhere else, right? But you also don't have to say that it has to have the exact same resources on every single server that it uses, right? So I'm going to use these resources when I restore it to Minion DevCon, but when I do it against a quality server, I'm going to use these resources, right? So this one's going to get 50, and this one's going to get 100 by default, right? Let's go ahead and check that out. I'm going to run one against Minion DevCon, and you can see that here I am getting, come on, there we go. Here I am getting my buffer count of 50 right there. And then when I run this against a quality server, when I expand this, now I am getting the 100 buffer count that I was expecting. So we've got these server profiles for restoring. Now, how would this work in an actual restore, right? What this is going to look like is a very simple process to, on your other box, you will connect to the primary box, to your prod box, via PowerShell or something, and run this statement for that server, and get the restore statement back and run the restore statement that it tells you to. That's how easy it's going to be, right? In another release, we're going to do all that for you. But for right now, you're going to write something similar to a PowerShell. You're going to connect, you're going to run this, and you're going to get it back. And it can be, since it's just a server name, then you can put parameters in there, right? So it's going to be the exact same process on every single server. You don't have to write something different for every box. You can keep it for the same one and just use parameters to guide which server they connect to. And they'll always pull from the last, it'll always take the last set of backups. So if the database backs up with 5 files one week and then 20 files with another week because it crosses some threshold, right? You'll always get the exact, you'll always get the exact restore statement that you need. Oops, no, I didn't want to do that. Stop it. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is the inline tokens, because you've seen it already, right? So let's build the database statements, the backup statements with Minion backup get, or statements backup get, right? So here, I'm getting my statements, my backup path, all of that, right? Let's insert some data here. I forget which data we're going to insert, but we're going to insert it anyway. There we go. Now, let's look at the path table again and see what we get. So now you can see I've got backup path with all of these weird parameters in there. So these parameters, ordinal of, num files, DB name, backup type, each parameter is surrounded with percent signs. Same thing for backup path and for file name. And what that does is that allows you to insert these dynamic values in there. So let's take a look and see what that's going to give us. I'm going to insert a little bit more right here. Yep. There we go. So, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I meant to do this. I'm going to truncate. I'm going to run this whole thing again. There we go. Now I'm going to run my statement generator, and let's see what we got. So I've got my file name is 1 of 1 demo full, ordinal of number of files, database name, backup type, right? That's what I got. In here I wanted server or server name followed by the database name in my path, and that's what I got. So if I want to change this, now I'm going to change it and put in, now I'm going to move the ordinal to the end. Instead of saying 1 of 1 for the file name, I'm going to give the file name, I'm going to put some underscores in there, and I'm going to say 1 of number of files instead at the end, right? So now when you look at this, I'm going to generate this statement. The different files that get created, demo full, 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, right? So now you can make your file names and your paths anything you want them to be. And this is table driven. So if I look in my inline tokens table, these are all of the parameter names that you have available to you. Let me expand this a little bit. The definitions of how they're gotten, the definition, so what you can expect to see from all of them, and whether or not they're custom. Yes, that's right. I said whether or not they're custom. So what that means is you can create your own variables. Let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. And this is the absolute last thing we're going to do. Actually, I'm going to add my own variable right here. I almost made a big mistake there. There we go. So I'm going to add that variable, and let's take a look at this. So what I wanted to do is I've got this custom variable in here that I'm calling netBIOS name, and I'm just taking the left so many characters. I'm taking the left 3 characters plus node 1. and I've set that to isCustom=1, and don't forget to activate it over here. Oh man, you're going to be sorry if you forget to activate it. So this is a scenario, say that if you've got a cluster and you want to keep track of where your files are coming from, right? So whether they're coming from node 1 or node 2, right? Which one is running the cluster? Then you'll be able to do that. Let me update this guy right here. Good. So I have now added that. So now my new file name is going to be server name, net BIOS name, database name, backup type, ordinal of number of files. Now, parameters are surrounded in percents, but your custom parameters are surrounded by pipes instead. And the reason we wanted to do that was because if you've got a lot of servers and a lot of databases and a lot of DBAs and people are out there creating custom variables, it's going to be very hard to know when your custom variables are being used and what they're being named. Maybe you've got guys out there creating slightly different names for things, right? And it's much easier to be able to see if you've got custom variables being used in any of these lines. If they're surrounded by pipes, then you can just search for a pipe instead of having to parse every one of these and then search it back to all of the columns in the original table, right? So now we get this guy right here. I get bindicon underscore bin node 1 demo full 1 of 3 dot back, and that is the essence of the inline tokens. And that is the essence of Minion CheckDB 1.0. There was a lot we couldn't show you, but a lot we did show you. We showed you the really cool stuff, right? There's a lot of nuance out there. I think I've got something like 18 or 20 videos already done. So that is the end of my demo.
And now we do the drawing, because I've got a literal hat full of literal Post-its with names on them.
She does. She has a literal hat.
You can hear them. All right, you don't get to look, but draw one out of the hat.
I am not looking. I am drawing one out of the hat. It is this one.
It says SQL Ferret.
SQL Ferret.
Ferret, you have won three licenses of Minion Enterprise, all for your very lonesome. They are permanent licenses, and it's enterprise software, so that's good stuff.
Excellent. Now, do we have any questions before we go?
Yeah, actually, Andrea asked, do you have a way to delete the restores that are done, like an expire time on them?
Not right now, because right now we're only creating the statements, right? But that is something that I believe is in the works when we actually start doing the restores.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm just trying to get the quiz. Where can we get the webinar demo SQL script you are using? How about if we put that up on the community zone? Or somewhere else? You want it up on the blog post?
Up on the blog post. Yeah, let's put it up on a blog post.
Okay, so yeah, we'll put that script up on minionware.net right now. There is a blog post announcing this very webinar. I'll stick a link to it on there.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And we'll wait another minute or so for further questions, but we may as well stop the recording.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now, and I will stay here as long as you guys want and talk and answer questions and whatnot. In fact, we can even turn on the mics.